the reality also is, if you know that you have 10 Ghana cedis, you cut your coat according to your size.
Definitely.
Is that not?
Yeah.
What have been some of our own policy indicative ideas that have now brought us to the point where we've racked up the budget beyond what we can contain?
Well, I mean, I listened to the Honorable Minister, and he did make very interesting analogies, and I could see he's asked that we should be very dispassionate in actually discussing this and sharing, which I found very interesting. I mean, the family analogy of a husband and wife, but here's the case. If the husband probably is keen to taking bank loans with very high interest, right, what's the family situation going to be? So there's a vast difference between an extravagant husband who is probably taking loans and not investing them rightly, and also a husband who is prudent and could probably lose his job or livelihood.
Can you relate it to
So I'm relating that. I'll come to that. You talk about going to the IMF for the 17th time, for the 16th time, or whatsoever. If you look at or you contextualize the situation, right, I'm trying to stick to the Honorable Minister's primacy set for us to be dispassionate and speak to the issues as professionals. Now, you look at the last 35 years have witnessed Ghana, right, being under the rule or the stewardship of the IMF 22 years. Right, so you see how it is like. So if a government comes into power and start to talk as though, you could hear the finance minister say that, going to the IMF is akin to the way the Israelites were treated in Egypt and all of that, right? These are premises that set us up for a very difficult engagement and actually to have a legitimacy to actually run an IMF program.
How so?
How so? In the sense that, could you not see what was happening? Now, again, we look at it in phases, right? There's never been any IMF program, right, which we have front-loaded to the extent that we have been to the capital market several times. We haven't had a debt exchange program before even having an IMF program. I can challenge the Honorable Minister to point an example to me, because this is a very unique case, which makes it very precarious. Now, I'll come to that, and I'll give you the numbers, and you probably...
So as you speak,
No. It's rhetoric. Give him his space.
Talk about the causes. Let there.
I am coming.
It's never also happened before.
I'll tell you that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so...
Because he brought me in, I need to...
Yeah, so what's happening here is that we left an IMF program 3 years ago, right? 2015. The Sektepe-led IMF, Mahama IMF program ended in 2019, which is 3 years ago. Sure. But that was taken in 2015, right? Yes. And we're talking about almost 1 billion. That is about 2% of GDP. This current 3 billion is about 4% of GDP. Now we go into the IMF at the time, we have central bank depletions, a big hole in the central bank. So I'm even wondering what this money would do once it hits our national treasury, the impact of it, or the real impact of it, which is why I'm quite skeptical to say that except for a program that the IMF is laying and which we may be committed to, it may be quite difficult to. Now, you look at all of these things that have happened, right? You look at research by JP Morgan, right, that point to the effect that the debt exchange alone, right, is giving bond value losses to about 50%. We've never had that before going to the IMF, right? We've been on the bond market. I mean, who runs an economy on bonds for well over 6 years? That is what we have had. And if you look at the financial press, current financial press, it's even difficult to predict the situations. I read The Economist, I think, sometime last night, who talk about describing our situation as pain and loom in equal measure, which makes it very difficult that there is little hope in what we are being engaged with. But then again, my worry is the transparency of this whole process, and which is why I want to urge the Honorable Minister to say, okay, look, we are engaged with the IMF. Can the transparency of it be out there? Can the commitment of it be out there? What are the conditionalities we are preempting? Until we're able to do this, we'll still wallow in, the kind of politicking of Mr. A did Y and Mr. B did Y. We finished a program 3 years ago. We've gone to the IMF again. And the very IMF that we vowed that we're never going to go to.
Well, the excuse was that 2020 we had COVID and we had all the difficulties.
No, but you saw that there was a joint Bretton Woods.
Supply chain.
No, but I'll come to that. There was a joint Bretton Woods report that indicated the fact that the economy was already in shambles before. which is evident.
No, it was
the
not.
IMF and the World Bank joint released that. If you doubt that, he can let you know.
No, that's a joint release that I've cited. Yes.
And World Bank came and
Please
said
go ahead.
that COVID led Ghana this way. It was doing well before.
Then
That's
you
not
talk
true.
about supply chains.
That's not true.
I am challenging you. Post-COVID, 3 months, supply chains returned to normalcy, right?
At what cost?
What do you say at what cost?
UK, how much? What's the inflation rate now?
What's
What's the interest rate now?
Let him make his point.
No, what's the interest
When
rate
you
in
were
UK now?
When
Base rate has been increased 1,600%.
So why
challenge
are you cherry picking? I'll challenge you. So what are the bank rates? Is it UK going to the IMF?
Oh, come on.
No, I'm asking you fundamentally.
What are you talking?
No, is it UK going to
But
the
we
IMF?
depend on UK.
No, but is it UK?
No, we depend on
going
them.
to
No
IMF?
fight, no fight.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
It's healthy.
yeah.
No,
No,
it's
it's a healthy
What
problem.
I'm saying is, UK's interest rate, doing business,
Steve-O,
the cost of
Steve-O.
it has been increased
Sika,
1,600%.
please let him make his point. I think
we
no, the
depend
two
on
of you.
them.
No, please.
So challenge me.
No,
I'll challenge you.
please.
challenge
Let
you.
him make his
Figures.
point, and then please note some of these things and make the rebuttal.
I think he's right.
I understand the Honourable Minister's surface interpretation.
So you're on that point where the comparisons are made with the UK and the
No, he made a point which I need to,
of course.
Yeah,
it's part of
he
it.
talks about
Please hurry up.
1,000% cost of doing 1,600.
Yeah,
When you talk
base
about
rate.
cost of doing business, it's a basket case of several items. So if that has been increased by 30,
But also have it in mind that for all the developed economies,
Yes.
their rates are always very low. So if you compare 1,000 rates, let's say it was 1%.
No, you don't.
If it was 1% or 2%,
Hold
it's
it.
1,000.
No,
Then there's a difference.
Let's not
So please.
mislead the public on this 1,000% rate.
1,600.
Right, or whatever it is.
Because in real terms, it
in
will be
real
different.
terms, it's different.
Yes.
So if we're going by this
what
rate,
is different?
No, how much does a businessman need, right, to borrow on the bank in terms of rates in the UK?
No,
It's
no,
1,000.
no.
No, I'm just asking you a simple question.
We are talking about percentage change.
Please, go ahead.
You
Please
don't
let
do
him.
the same rate. Then I'm surprised.
No, you are
Please,
cherry
please, please,
picking.
please.
I'm giving us a
Please,
picture
please,
that is
let's not have this
consistent.
discussion. Please, let's go.
Where are you getting your figures from?
Please, let's go.
My figures?
Yeah.
0.525 to 4.5.
It's okay.
Check
Let's
the
go.
percentage
Let's go.
increase.
Let's go.
No, I'm
The
asking
current
now.
base
Let
rate in
me
the
do
UK
it.
is 4.5. Let's go. Let's go ahead.
4.5, yes.
So what-
from
Let's go
0.25.
Yes.
So what's the percentage change?
It is not the same. I think that please let go ahead.
It is not the same.
What
You
is
are
not
trying
the
to
same?
mislead
Please,
the
please,
public.
No, percentage change is there. You don't understand. Either the two of you don't understand, or my brother is because he knows what I'm talking
It's the
about.
same argument we make with Ghana when we use percentages for a debt to GDP. It's okay.
Of course, you can't say
I
the figure is
understand,
1,600.
I
No,
understand. So don't say that we don't understand. Please go
Because
ahead.
they had basis of about 1%. We then had almost 40%.
Please go ahead.
So, and what is the 4%?
The real terms are
Yes.
different.
Yeah,
Please,
okay,
let's
well,
speak to the
let's just
real
say the real-
terms.
yeah, the real terms.
Let's
We
speak
depend on
let's speak
them.
to the real
That is
figures.
my
That's
argument.
okay. Go ahead.
Well, I'm speaking to the real terms, and I want viewers
Oh,
to know that
come
we're
on.
speaking
No,
to
no,
real
what-
terms.
Yes.
We're not,
you are
you know,
misleading
based
the
on
public.
whatever
Go
to
ahead.
mislead
Go ahead.
people.
Go ahead.
So you can't, conjure 1,000%, 2,000%. That is not the reality, and this is not what happens in
Please go ahead.
practical
Go ahead.
terms when it comes to the functionality of an economy, right?
So the question I was asking, please let's not get out of
Yeah, carry on.
timing and then remits by way of the debate. So the question fundamentally I asked was, and we have to deal with this quickly.
Yeah, let's do it.
If we rack up expenditure, and I'm saying that we have to make sure that we spend within our means, what sort of expenditure have we put on the budget over the last couple of years that have made it unrealistic for us to be able to...
No, but you see, under COVID, we went to the World Bank.
Yes.
Right? Did we factor that in? We went to the World Bank under COVID. What did we do with
Well,
that
they
money?
made it available.
Yes, but what did we do with that money? What kind of investments did we go into? If we had gone into real tangible investments, can we call back and have a post-COVID analysis of the World Bank concession that we received and how it reflects and impacts upon the economy?
GDP.
This is and to do GDP. This is a fundamental thing that we need to do, right? So, but why are we not talking about that? What were the investments that we made, right? What were the gains we made? Right, and these are loans that probably run up to 35 years, which your grandchildren probably might
So
come
you're
up to.
saying that we have to make sure that the monies we take from these and our multilateral partner, we invest in projects that will
Viable
give us,
projects that
will give
have
us returns.
prudent
Okay,
and
go ahead.
effective return on investments that could reflect upon the economy. But you realize that on the shopping spree that we went on the bond market, right, if those monies were involved or invested in tangible areas of the economy. And I'll challenge the minister who is now with the trade ministry, who could give us the figures into what these monies went into, right? What kind of investments they put them in and what kind of investments they attracted with these kind of concessions. And he may be able to tell us because it's been a good couple of years, right? And 5 years is enough to have, a postmortem of an investment project to really see whether there's viability, there's feasibility in reflecting on the real impacts that it has. But all of this has happened, yet we see nothing. And we are back to the IMF again. And the interesting thing is that, the government is forcing us to jubilate that we have had an IMF deal. And I find that really very...
Well, somebody asks why not?
But why should we jubilate? Is it a good thing to even go to the IMF in the first place? Should we still be under the umbilical cord of the IMF? You'd realize that where we have a problem, ever since the president gave an address to the nation and promised us that he'll be coming regularly to update us on the economy with the famous Sikam PDD speech. When was the last time he returned to us? That is because they have nothing to share with the average Ghanaian people, right? If they are at work and doing something very prudent, come out to say this is what we've been doing. We all saw his COVID updates, which was backed by an international project, that efforts that were put around, and he gave us constant updates. With this, he promised us he was going to be back and be constant on our screens as much as he is or was in the instance of COVID-19. What are we witnessing today? Right, so I think that, we have to look at these things, and you see signals of conditionalities and all of that coming up. But the government is not even forthcoming to say that, okay, well...
Like which signals?
Well, look at how fast the president passed new tax levies into law, right? These are some of the signals.
What about the increase in utility tariffs?
Utilities, we're coming to that. Almost 20% increase in utility tariffs.
So those are the signs.
So these are preemptive measures that have been put by the government, because you know that IMF come with a lot of pain, right? Because there's going to be austerity, there's going to be, and my concern here is even that it is coming too little too late, in the sense that we're moving into an election year. And we all know in an election year, governments tend to spend a lot, right? Under an IMF program or a fresh IMF program in an election year, I am interested to see how the current government will navigate this, right? So it's quite an interesting, conundrum that we are in. And if you look at it, again, I don't want us to be in a case, because if you look at an international economic landscape, pundits are having it that we may face the Zambian situation where you have an IMF deal and you are still having, debt negotiations with all of these we talk about. We are talking about domestic debt alone, 136 billion cedis. If you translate it in nominal dollar value terms, we're talking about probably about 15.2 billion. You come to the international bond.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's huge. That is just the domestic. You come to international, we're talking about 16 billion. And we're just having a trickle of a 3 billion coming in, which is coming in tranches. We're just having 600 million. And that we've been asked by the governments and its pundit to have a hooray to this. I think we've gone to the IMF with our tails in between our legs, and we ought to be humble about this.